Hey guys, what's up? My name is Sky Webb and I'm here to talk about a true crime story that I cannot get off my mind. But before I get started, I just want to put out a little disclaimer that I mean no harm to any of the victims or the victims' families, and I wish everyone who was hurt within this story the utmost peace and solace, either in rest or in recovery. With that out of the way, happy True Crime Thursday. How is everyone doing? How are you feeling? What are you up to? What are you proud of this week or this year or this century? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to know what everyone's up to. This week's story is about, drumroll please. That was such a shit drumroll. Aileen Wuronos. How do you say her name?
I'm as guilty as can be, and there's more.
She was like a spider, waiting to prey.
You're not even going to say it?
It's a good thing Florida has death penalty. Because if it didn't, she said, I would kill you.
It makes sense in my head, but don't come out right. Just tell me how you say it. Aileen Wuronos. I thought it was about time that we finally cover Aileen, because she was the first, most infamous female serial killer in America. So she's a very interesting lady. Aileen was born on the 29th of February 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her mum and her dad were married while they were still really young. Her mum was only 14 years old when they got married, and her dad was only 16, so not much older. And they had actually already had a son by the time Aileen was even born, so they got down and busy very early in their lives. So Aileen had an older brother called Keith. Just 2 months before Aileen was born, her parents filed for divorce. And then when Aileen was actually born, her dad was already incarcerated, so she actually never got to meet him at all. Her entire life, he was in and out of prison, he was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and he was a known child molester. So he was known for abuse and rape, and he had actually been charged for the rape of a 7-year-old. So he was a really despicable person. The girl was only 7 years old that he was like charged for, so he wasn't someone you'd really want to be around anyway. And he ended up killing himself while still in prison, while Aileen was still a child in 1969. So he died while she was still fairly young. When Aileen was 4 years old, her and her brother got taken to their grandparents' house for like a little play date, a little hangout or whatever. And her mum said goodbye to them, like gave them both a kiss on the head, said goodbye and left. And then she never returned. She just left them at their grandparents' house forever. She completely abandoned them, and despite the grandparents actually both being pretty bad alcoholics, they decided that they would take the kids and legally adopt them. Now, like usually this would be a good thing. It means the kids aren't like in and out of foster homes, they're not in the system, whatever. But the grandparents didn't exactly provide a loving home or even a safe home for the kids. Aileen claims her grandfather in particular would become really quite aggressive when he was drunk and drinking, and he would beat her physically and then sexually assault her as well. Even worse than that though is that instead of him just like getting drunk and then sexually assaulting her, which is bad enough as it is, he would invite his friends over, he would invite like colleagues over, and like basically offer Aileen up as like a fucking hors d'oeuvre, like literally just hand her over to them. It's disgusting. So all of his friends would just come over and rape his granddaughter. So by the time Aileen was 11, she had a really misguided like outlook on what sex was and what sex was used for. And I mean, she didn't really have like a solid person in her life to teach her right from wrong. So she had a really misguided view on sexuality and men and sex in general. And so she started to trade sexual favors at school for things in return, for like cigarettes or drugs or food, which Can you imagine being 11 years old and having to go and give a guy a sexual favor to get food? At 11. Then at the age of 14, Aileen fell pregnant. And the fucking son of a bitch that impregnated her was one of her grandparents' fucking friends. So he obviously wasn't going to have anything to do with it. So Aileen was sent to a home for unwed mothers. So basically the whole point of these places was to take like young mothers, teen mothers who weren't married, which it wasn't like socially acceptable to not be married and be pregnant, and hide them away for 9 months until they popped out the baby. They're gonna take the baby, adopt it out somewhere, and then the mothers get to go home and then tell all their friends that they were like on a ski trip for 9 months. Like, they were kind of shitty places. So after Aileen had her baby and the baby was taken and adopted out, she came back home and she lived with her grandparents for a little bit. But then her grandmother died. And at this point, Aileen's only 15 years old. So she's already lost her mum, she's lost her dad, she's been raped, impregnated, given birth to the baby, lost the baby. Now she's home and her grandmother dies. So what's the grandfather do? Kicks them out. He says that he doesn't have a place for Aileen or Keith, which is her brother, by the way, to live anymore. So at this point, both Keith and Aileen, they just split ways. They're both just trying to find like a place to stay. I guess they had different viewpoints. I don't really know much about their relationship, whether they were close in the childhood or not. I doubt it, but they split up. And Aileen decides that she's just gonna sleep in like this wooded area that's nearby, and she basically is just like camping out in the woods near her town. And so to support herself, because obviously she still needs food, she still needs clothes, she still needs supplies, only 15, she decides to work as a sex worker, because that's really the only like thing she knows how to do. So then when Aileen was 18, she was actually arrested in Colorado for a DUI and disorderly conduct. And she also got charged for firing a gun out of a moving vehicle. So not really sure what that was about. Don't think it really matters in the grand scheme of things. But then she was charged again for failure to appear in court for those charges. So then Aileen hitchhiked to Florida, where she met this older gentleman. He was 69 years old and his name was Lewis. And he was really quite well known. He was pretty like poshy, pretty rich, pretty like prestigious. He was like the yacht club president. He was a little bit like all that, like he was kind of fancy. And they got along really well and they got married really, really quickly. The marriage was a little bit rocky though, because Aileen, she had a pretty bad temper and she liked to hang out at bars and she liked to drink. And when she got drunk at these bars and people were fucking pigs, I mean, not all of them were pigs. I'm just talking about like, I know she had a lot of confrontations with men in general, and I think from her like past, she like, yeah, I don't know. Not all of them were pigs. I didn't mean to make it sound like she's the victim. She wasn't, but she would get in a lot of bar fights because she was so drunk and angry, and just like a lot of confrontation all the time, like constant, weekly, daily basis almost. And normally this doesn't really get a lot of attention, but because she was married to Lewis, who's like a fancy guy, it got like attention and it was on the news and it was like being talked about and gossiped about, and he didn't like that. That's not the type of image that he wanted to be like portrayed in the world. So they ended up getting divorced. So they ended up like arguing about it. And then only a few weeks after actually getting married to Lewis, they got in a fight with each other, and Aileen got so angry that she grabbed his own cane and whacked him over the head with it, like his own fucking cane, like a little bitch. And because of this, he filed a restraining order, because like that was not what he was about. That was not his life. He didn't like that type of shit. So they got divorced. This led her back to Michigan, where she again got in confrontation after confrontation after confrontation, because she was always drunk and she was always at bars, because I mean, bars are a really good place to look for men who like will pay you for your services, you know what I mean? Like, so she was always at bars, and this time she got arrested for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head, which fucking Ow. Shortly after this incident, Eileen's brother Keith, he actually dies. He dies from cancer, the poor thing. And Aileen inherits $10,000 from his life insurance. And the sad thing is that like, this could have been a really, really good opportunity for Aileen. This could have helped her get her shit together. You know what I mean? Like, you don't got to spend your life in bars picking up men that you hate, you know? Like, she could have done something with that 10 grand, but she didn't. She first paid $100 for her drink driving fines, which, I mean, at least she's taking care of some of her responsibilities. And I mean, $100 out of 10K, no biggie, could still hunker down, still get your shit together, still get sorted. But Aileen wanted a car first, and not just like a cheap little like place A to B type car. She wanted a car, you know what I mean? Like a car. And she ended up ruining and smashing her car. So, solid investment. And then she spent the rest of the money within 2 months. Like, just gone. Poof, no money in 2 months. Like, that's very, very quickly for someone who like never has money. You could have not done that. So then she got caught robbing a convenience store, and she robbed them out of $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes, which is ridiculous. And she was sentenced to prison for a year for that. So it's like, was that really worth it? $35 and you get a year in prison. It doesn't seem worth it to me, but then again, she had somewhere stable to live for a year. Like, she had meals given to her 3 times a day. Like, it was a much more stable life than her life would be regularly. So maybe it was worth it for her. Then only a couple of days after being released from prison, she's in trouble again for this time trying to cash forged checks. Like, how silly. She was then arrested multiple times for assault, robbery, car theft, stealing, carrying guns, carrying ammunition, and just honestly like a lot of the same shit. This was just how she lived her life. So then Aileen meets a woman called Tyra Moore, and she's a maid at some hotel in Daytona Beach, and they meet at a lesbian bar. So they hit it off really, really well. They get along really easily, really quickly, and they decide that they want to move in together. So they get a place and they decide that they're basically gonna live off Eileen's like sex worker money, and Aileen decides she's gonna support Tyra with that money. But like at this point, Eileen's continuing to get into confrontations all the time. She's always arguing, always fighting. Like at this point, I feel like she just literally couldn't help herself. Even when she was like happy and a little bit more stable, she was still doing the same shit. Like, I don't know whether it was like some subconscious thing where she always had to prove that she was like tough enough or strong enough or could like protect herself enough, or whether she genuinely just like had a bad temper and got in fights easily and like couldn't hold her tongue. I don't know. But now that she had Tyra, every time the police came knocking about a new confrontation, a new argument, a new assault charge, she had Tyra to back her up. Like, Tyra would always say, no, it was them. They started it. They attacked her. What are you talking about? She didn't do anything. Aileen didn't touch that person. Like, she just constantly had a little backup, like, person to pretend she was a witness. So, made Eileen's life a lot easier. Then in 1989, Aileen kills a man, the very first man that we know of. So, a lot of people suspect that there might have been people before that, but she claims it was the first man that she ever killed. And he was a convicted rapist. His name was Richard Mallory. So he basically met up with her for like her services. He was going to pay her for these services, and they go to a secluded, abandoned area. But once they got to this secluded, abandoned, wooded area, instead of him paying her for her services, which is obviously what you're supposed to do, Aileen alleged that he instead attacked her. She alleged that he sodomized her before beating the shit out of her, basically. So she claims that she killed him out of self-defense, and that's something that she has always maintained, that kill was 1,000% out of self-defense, which a lot of people do believe because he was already a convicted rapist. It kind of makes sense that if he thinks and wants to get away with having sex with someone who doesn't want it, like, it makes sense that he's going to do that rather than wanting to pay for it. But I mean, it's also the word of a serial killer who's telling you this. So I mean, not me, I'm not a serial killer. I mean, Aileen, who said it's self-defense, you know what I mean. So make up your own mind, basically. I don't fucking know. So she says that she killed him in November, 2 days before his missing car was found, but they didn't find his body until December. And he'd been shot several times with 2 bullets in his lungs, so that was his cause of death. On the 1st of June 1990, David Spears was found dead on the side of the highway. He was found in Florida, dead and naked and shot 6 times. And then on the 6th, Charles Cacketson, or something like that, was found dead after being shot 9 times. Her next victim's body was never actually found, but he was declared missing. And then his car was found on the 4th of June after witnesses had seen both Tyra and Aileen driving his car. So that's how she's like tied to it, and like that's considered her murder even though they didn't find the body. Then on the 31st of July, Troy Barres, he was reported missing, and then his body was found later on the 4th of August, and he was shot as well. And then on the 12th of September, Charles Humphrey, he was found after being shot as well. And then finally on the 19th of November, William Antonio was found dead after being shot 4 times. So all of these murders happened within the time span of only 1 year. So as I said, like, they were just super close together. All of the murders obviously had a lot in common, but they also were all clients. They were all like meeting up for the sex work, and then that's when they were killed. And obviously the murders have a lot in common, and like their reason for being there obviously is the same reason, but their personalities were like very different. Like, they varied a lot. One was a security guard, one was like a former police chief, one was very religious, and then obviously one was like a convicted rapist. So the type of men that she was killing really didn't have much in common personality wise, and I just feel like that's important to note as well, because a lot of people justify her killing the rapist, but it's like, what about these other men who were very different? Like, I guess no one knows whether they were inherently good or bad or what, but like, just thought it's important to put out there. So those witnesses that saw Aileen and her girlfriend driving the car actually witnessed them crash the car. Like, good on you girls. And so they gave a description of Aileen to the police, and that's how the police ended up getting her name. And so they started with like a whole big campaign to actually locate Aileen and her girlfriend. It was a whole like big thing. And then from there they started finding a lot of different property with Aileen's fingerprints on it. Obviously they already had her fingerprints because she'd been arrested so many times, and so it all was like really easy to link to Aileen. So on the 9th of January 1991, Aileen was found and arrested at this biker bar called The Last Resort, and she was found alone because her girlfriend had like booked it. She just fucking like left. So the police continued to look for Tyra, and they didn't find her until the next day in Pennsylvania. So she really was trying to make a fucking run for it. By the way, she goes by Ty. I should have been calling her Ty, but I forgot that she goes by Ty. So from there, the police decided to try and use Ty as like a way to get answers, basically. They offered Ty immunity if they could get her to basically get a confession out of Aileen, which is kind of shitty. So they took her to Florida, they set her up in a hotel room, they gave her a phone that was like tapped or wired or whatever the fuck. And basically she just made all these calls to Aileen where she was like, look, they're trying to pin everything on me, everything's falling back on me, I had nothing to do with it. Like, basically playing like a massive sympathy victim card so that Aileen would like be like, it's okay, I'll take care of you. Like, it was a really manipulative way to do it. Like, you could have just asked her to confess. I don't know, it was just very manipulative, like considering they were dating. Like, I don't know, I found it weird. Anyway, they made a lot of these calls, and then a couple of days later they got a confession out of Aileen, so they got what they wanted and Ty got immunity. So Aileen ended up having a separate trial for each of the murders, so that resulted in her getting a total of 6 life sentences, and she didn't receive any charges for the murder where the body wasn't found, because it's very hard to prove without a body. So she claimed that the first murder, the convicted rapist had in fact raped her, and that's why she killed him, out of self-defense, because she didn't want it to happen again and didn't know like where else it could go, whether he would kill her or not. So completely claimed self-defense. And then she claimed that the other men that she murdered didn't rape her, but they had begun to try to rape her.
I knew I was raped, and you weren't nothing but a bunch of scum.
Therefore, these proceedings are now
Putting
concluded.
somebody who was raped to death.
But I mean, if you believe her, then she killed them just as much out of self-defense as she did the first guy. Like, you don't have to be raped first to then kill someone out of self-defense. Like, if someone starts to rape you, fucking kill them. Like, that's self-defense. That's what self-defense fucking is. But if you don't believe her, then it's like, it's very difficult, I guess. I don't know. A lot of people don't believe her. A lot of people think she just started doing it for fun, or maybe she didn't want to have sex with them anymore, so she thought, it like, if I can just kill them and get away with it, I don't have to have sex anymore. I don't know.
All they were was shot and left. If it was a horrendous crime, why didn't I shoot them between the eyes, cut their penis off, stick it in their mouth, you know, do all kinds of gross stuff? All they were was shot and left. Everybody's looking at the number.
Does that not, you
Well, I
killed
looked at
7
the
men,
number.
7 strangers. Does that not make you a serial killer?
So I didn't kill them every day, did I? Did I go out there every day and say, I'm gonna kill? If I did, there would
Well,
be
no,
hundreds.
it took you 12 months.
Yeah, and that's a hell of a lot of men I went through before the next jerk came along, and I used protection, like a condom.
So it was
from AIDS.
It was self-defense.
Yeah.
Lee, the first one, perhaps. The second, maybe. But
So what?
7 times?
So what? I never hated men, but now I do. I mean, not all. I have a category. I hate those male. God. I hate those male cops. Real bad, because they're dirtballs.
And I mean, her story has changed from time to time. When she was on death row and had already been on death row for a considerable amount of time, she changed her story to say that she robbed these men.
As they said, they had it right. A serial killer. Not so much like thrill kill. I was into the robbing biz. I mean, you know, serial killers are in this thrill killing jazz. I was into the robbing, just and eliminate a witness. But still, then again, I got a number, so it's serial killer. But I'm coming clean before I go in that execution chamber and be executed that I killed him. There was no self-defense. I'm being really straight up about everything. There's no self-defense. I'm really sorry what happened about everything. Learning how to be a hooker as a hitchhiker.
Right.
Eventually got tiring. In the end, I carried the gun for protection, but then I got where I was getting a real problem. Our rent was due, $1,200 behind. Tyra was doing a lot of beer drinking and stuff. She wanted to go out all the time, so she was burning up the money I was making. Yeah, Richard Mallory was not self-defense. Richard Mallory I killed, and I needed his wheels to move the stuff, and he had the right amount of money I needed to move into the apartment, so.
But what about the testimony that you gave in court about?
Oh, that's just, like I was saying,
About the Visine and...
oh, I was just doing a lying biz.
But then she's also claimed that she only said that because she was sick of being on death row and she just wanted to die already. So it's like, I don't know. Her attorneys tried to claim that she wasn't of sound mind and so she shouldn't be like fit to sit trial and be sentenced. But she was seen by like a board of psychologists and psychiatrists, and they said that no, like she is mentally fit to stand trial, and so she did. She was executed on the 9th of October 2002, and she refused to have a last meal. All she had was a coffee. And I read that the last meal can be anything as long as it's under $20, which, what the fuck? I mean, I know they're murderers and stuff, but $20, that is so shit. Like, I would want my last meal to be like so extravagant. I think about this all the time and I don't know what my last meal would be, so hopefully I don't have to like decide that anytime soon, because I have not decided yet. But like, it would be more than $20. Like, that is not a lot of dollars. I think that is so rude. That shouldn't annoy me as much as it does, but it does. And like, Chinese is expensive, and so is KFC. Like, KFC is pretty expensive. Like, I could get a pretty like okay meal from KFC for like $30. Like, that's not a lot of money. That just bums me out. So that is the story of Aileen Wuronos. I can't say her name, I'm so sorry. That is the story of Aileen, the world's most infamous female serial killer. I'm so glad that I finally got to cover her story, because she is quite an interesting character. I don't know what I think about her, so I'd really love to know what you think about her. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that she was seriously like acting out of self-defense, or do you think she had like a hatred for men, or what do you think? I would really love to know what you think. So let me know in the comments down below, or you can head over to my Facebook, which is Skyweb with 3 B's, and let me know there. And also, if you have any case suggestions, please let me know, because it's nice to get a little suggestion every now and then, so I can give you what you want to see. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it, and be sure to subscribe so that you can see all my new videos I post every single Thursday, all about true crime. So make sure you don't miss any of those. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. Don't get married at 14 unless you're like really in love. Don't leave 10k to people who are gonna blow it all, unless they're gonna blow it on something really good. And most importantly, don't get into bar fights, because you'll get a cue ball thrown at your face, and that would hurt like a motherfucker. Thank you so much for watching. Be safe. Bye.